The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Rolling my way up to episode 300. We're at number 293 for the program. Welcome. We're going to talk about country music, which has dominated for the bulk of this year thanks to Morgan Wallen, and this summer thanks to the likes of Luke Combs, Jason Aldean, and Oliver Anthony. Now, some of you might listen to the program, and of course, some of you that might catch a conventional podcast, you're going to say to yourself, oh, we know what you're going to talk about. It's going to be something political, right? No. Let me remind you, and for those that are just listening to the program for the first time, welcome. And I hope you get a chance to listen to more episodes and catch the backlog. Everything's at kingofpodcasts.com. Everything is there. All my programming, music playlists that I also listen to myself that I like to share with all of you. kingofpodcasts.com. There it is. And all my content is available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and all other major podcast portals. So country music. I'm not going to talk about it from the perspective of why the music has gotten to the top of the charts. It's more about what isn't on the top of the charts that should be. And a lot of the reasons, if you listen to this program long enough, you know that there are reasons why this is going on like it is. When rock music basically went into the underground, basically in the late 90s, early 2000s, after Woodstock 99, basically, was the beginning of the end for rock music as a mainstream music component that we would see on a regular basis. Because after that, started to fizzle. And by the 2010s, non-existent. Okay? Rock wasn't in the music anymore. It wasn't in the lexicon of mainstream music. It went away. It's still there in some way, shapes, or forms. Listen, there's some good artists out there that are still performing. Thank you. But for whatever reason, and I talked about this a while back with Dave Pratt, the morning mayor, who was previously at KUPD in Phoenix, Arizona. You know, I need to pull this clip up because he talks about country music and he talks about why rock music went away, because he was on a very long-standing rock music station. And he saw the writing on the wall. I'm going to look for that clip real quick, and I want to go ahead and play that for you.
That rock, the whole rock is dead argument. Rock radio faded, and you smartly moved into country after that. KMLE, which is in the same cluster, which was a good thing. Now, you saw the writing on the wall. You saw rock changing. They always talk about Woodstock 99 as being one of the major factors, but more than that, what is it now that, I mean, I'm almost about the fact you got to hear things with instruments and not digital. Talk to me about the fact that when you switched over to country, you still get to hear what's kind of what rock was. It's like you're still hearing people with instruments, and it's like this guitar and it's drums, and it's like not anymore. And like alternative rock is so different now. So I don't even know what it is supposed to be anymore.
So when that transition happened, I was at KUPD for 20 years, and they had changed ownership. They went to a corporate ownership, and rock was changing for KUPD to these alternative bands. Instead of being fun and exciting and having a smile on their face and really enjoying the ride, you got a bunch of angry alternative people staring at their tennis shoes on stage, depressed, wearing a plaid shirt. It didn't do anything for me. It didn't resonate with me. Yeah. And at the same time, this corporate vanilla homogenized ownership was coming in to KUPD. So I told them, I said, guys, I'm going to find something else to do. Now, this is before I even had another job. I just said, guys, I'm out. And they said, well, where are you going? Somebody else making the offer? And I said, no, I just don't want to be here. I don't want to be with you. But I appreciate my time here, but I have no interest in this culture. During that time, once I made it known that I was going to leave KUPD, we were blessed to have many offers in town, from talk radio to country to rock or whatever.
Yeah.
And this rock station in town that was nowhere at the time, Howard was not on it, by the way, made me an offer at CBS. They said, Dave, would you come over? I said, sure. And they said, that's it? We're not going to talk money or anything? I said, I'll show you what KUPD offered. You match it, and I'm there. And they said, that's it? I said, yep. So I took him the offer from KPD, and I said, here it is. Match it. Throw some appearances and endorsements on top, and I'm there. We're done. We're down the road. They said, that's it? No agent, nothing? I said, no, that's it.
So Dave goes away from CBS, but then comes back to CBS, and it was after he was left to another rock station, and then he gets offered to do country. And listen to what he says.
Together. Well, anyway, about a year and a half, I got bored. And I said, I need a new challenge. CBS came to me and they said, Dave, our country station's dying. And they kind of laughed. And I said, great, I'll do it. And they go, yeah, right. And I said, no, guys, I'll do it. They said, you'll do what? I said, I'll do mornings. They said, there's no way, Dave. A 30-year rock guy in this town going, mornings? Are you kidding? And I said, look, and this is what you were referring to a few minutes ago. I said, look, guys, country is the new rock. And they said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I said, you have Garth Brooks flying over stadiums in harnesses. You have the hottest women now in the music industry as the poster girls in rock with Faith Hill and Shania Twain. You have Pyro coming from Kenny Chesney and these shows that's bigger than Kiss.
Yep.
You have the new rock and country, and you don't even realize it. I said, look at Nashville right now. Kid Rock is there.
Yeah.
Right? Kid Rock had a number one song in country. I think it was number one with Sheryl Crow called Picture. Bon Jovi had a number one song, Who Says You Can't Go Home, with Jennifer Nettles from Sugarland.
Right.
At the time, ZZ Top was in Nashville hanging out with Brooks and Dunn. Metallica's on the CMA Awards. I mean, what is going on? Everybody's in Nashville. If Leonard Skinner came out today, they would be country.
Yes, I agree.
Now, that's going back, if I have to go and figure out how far back that was when we talked, well, with the time frame he's talking about there, and he's talking about the song with Kid Rock and Picture, that's 2001. And it was the change of the millennium that changed a lot, because we were going through a lot of things anyway with music where, you know, we had the boy bands, we had, you know, the Britney Spears and the Christina Aguilera's and the Pinks and all this going on. And then country was making a move in the mainstream. It was no longer the twangy steel pedal guitar, you know, banjo kind of thing like it was before. No. Country was a new rock. That was 20 years ago. When that transition fully made form, rock was gone. And he said it on the radio because rock had changed. And the instrumentals and all that it was. So country's a new rock. And now it took 20 years for country to become as powerful as rock music was. So if you see the dynamic, the spectrum, it changes. And we have this here now. But more importantly, it's what's been missing. The fact that we don't have certain music out there anymore that was, so the variety of music. Okay, anywhere else in the world, I listen to I listen to the UK, to BBC Radio 1, and the variety of music that's going on over there. Okay, last week, I was listening to the BBC Radio 1, and Oliver Anthony's Rich Men North of Richmond broke into the top 40, number 23. I'm like, listening to BBC Radio 1, I'm like, okay, Jack Saunders is going to play the record. Are you kidding me? I was blown away. Now, they didn't play Morgan Wallen's Last Night, which has been non-consecutive 16 weeks to be on the chart and has charted the top 40 there when it comes to Britain. But they're not playing it, obviously, because of the 2000 issue with the N-word. That's going to, persona non grata. So they're just going to make a mention. But anybody overly controversial, they don't play. Luke Combs' Fast Car, they played. And I believe it was the same week, last week as well, because it broke the top 40. Country is also making its way overseas. Now, it might not be as big as it is in the U.S., but it comes from here. So obviously it needs to go here. But this is what's happening. Music has lost its way. And there's something to be said about with country music, it's still instrumentals. All these artists, by the way, they all play their own instruments. They're all playing guitar. Right? They got bands. Full instrumental. Guitar, drums, everything. They're performing. It's not something you just computer generate and engineer in a studio, and then you're just playing it back out in the backing track in a concert. No. And they're all, minus Oliver Anthony, who's still very new, really new, all those other stars are established. And if you put them on a tour individually, they're going to sell out shows. And they're doing it now. Hip-hop music, there was an amazing story I saw that, okay, well, now hip-hop has not had a number one song in the Billboard Hot 100 this year or last year since Super Freaky Girl is the last song to hit number one. Meanwhile, rap music has been out. Not even in the mention. Right now, currently, there's one song I think that's now in the top 10. That's You Mean by Gunna. Fuck You Mean, right? But that's where we are. So rock artists collaborating with country artists in the early 2000s, right? Nelly with Florida Georgia Line. BB Rex with Florida Georgia Line, right? You're seeing it all together. Nelly with Tim McGraw. Like, it goes along. Reggae doesn't take a spot, and that actually was for a little bit in the 2000s. We saw a little bit of that kind of mainstreaming. But what gets in the mainstream now, people might not like the fact that country music is so prominent now in the mainstream. These record companies, you know, obviously there's a lot of people in pop culture. It's going to be a crowd that doesn't necessarily listen to country music. Like, it is widespread and it is widely received, but we know there's a lot of people that don't listen to country at all or never listen to it. You have to be in the mood for it. Now, there's quite a bit of the country music that is very much like rock. It just feels like rock music, and it charts as rock music. Jelly Roll gets in there. Hardy gets up there. There's others. And, like, just the way it is. To where I've heard country being done in EDM, like, that's another story. But anyways, I look at all that, and I'm saying to myself, they're commanding the charts. They've taken control. And why? Why is it so much like this now more than ever? Well, we're going to dig into it. We got to talk about it. So at the moment right now, like I said, if you started at the start of the year, Last Night by Morgan Wallen has been at the chart. It's currently number 3, I think it is right now. But 16 non-consecutive weeks. The entire of 2023, by the way. It peaked at number 1 in February of 2023. February 13th, 2023 on the Hot Country Singles chart. And then went to number 1 March 18th, 2023. And it stayed there. Oh, by the way, the same week that Morgan Wallen hit number 1 with Last Night, the song had over 47 million streams, 18,000 digital downloads, and airplay to radio stations, 10.8 million spins. 36 of his songs hit the Hot 100, the most of any artist, as well as 5 of the top 10 songs of the Hot 100. It's like the fucking Bee Gees all over again. Last Night became the first country song by a solo male artist to hit the Hot 100 in over 42 years. The last one to do it, Eddie Rabbitt's I Love a Rainy Night in 1980. And the first country song to top the chart since All Too Well, Taylor's version, November 2021. And remember, we saw August 5th, 2023, the chart ending August 5th, 2023, the Billboard Hot 100 featured, you had Last Night at number 2. Jason Aldean's Try That in a Small Town, number 1. Luke Combs' Fast Car, number 3. And this month has been like that. And for the last 2 weeks now on the chart, Rich Men North of Richmond is number 1. If I'm correct, I got to look at the chart right now, but it's Fast Car by Luke Combs, if I'm correct, is number 2. And Morgan Wallen's, Fast Car Luke Combs is number 2. Last Night, Morgan Wallen's 3. It's just like that. There's a lack of pop artists out there with real staying power right now that could command the charts. I mean, look right now, we have the issue with Scooter Braun. Ariana Grande, by the way, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, that she's officially dropped Scooter Braun as her management, high management, right? There's a whole issue right there with all those different artists right there just alone, who, if they put out an album or put out a single, it would go up to the charts. It would go ahead and dominate, as it would. But it's not. So as we're looking at all this, we look and see, okay, Billboard talks about the summer of pop music. And they make the point and say that the chart has been absolutely dominated by country this year, unlike any summer in Hot 100 history. Country's been holding down one or more of the top spots of the chart for the whole season. Meanwhile, the other part we've had to where we've been looking at as well, we talked about that a few months ago with the regional Mexican sound, with Eslabon Armado, Peso Pluma, right? Grupo Frontera, right? And Bad Bunny and all this other stuff. Like, it was just a lot of music was able to get up there. But the music we would expect is not. And that's going to be something I need to make a point of. But we need to, first of all, look at what has been happening to the music that we have now in our mainstream. Pop music is hurting right now. They don't have enough music, not enough in their inventory to warrant a pop music station, to have a station out there that just plays pop radio. New music in pop, or new music in general, that would be on a station like that. So that's why they're resorting to throwbacks. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Now, there still is mainstream pop. Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, the Barbie soundtrack cast. Hip-hop does have Gunna and Toosii, right? Rema and Selena Gomez also have their hit. 50/50's been up there over the summer. Last year it was As It Was by Harry Styles that dominated. Also 16 weeks. At the moment, Last Night still is huge with streaming, huge at radio, and still getting good downloads. There's no basis supporters influence in the charts. It's just popular. But where's pop music gone? Where's hip hop gone? Where's rock gone? Rock is not even is a name anymore, because rock has now been basically swallowed up by country. Like the rock that we remember, it's not like that anymore. It has to be country. It's going to be considered country. But that's because we're then rock music fans probably go ahead and they start going towards that level. And there's also probably an age gap that goes with that too, right? So Billboard's writers asked if country's going to dominate the rest of the year. And Katie Atkinson with them actually says that country's command of the Hot 100 is just getting started. So there's songs that we've already talked about that are just traditional sustained hit songs with undeniable reach. But she also says that there are probably more variety hits from the country world to come, and hip hop will find their way to the top after an unfathomable year-long absence. Now, the other thing that's being said about is that next week, another artist that's going to be really hitting the spot right now is Zach Bryan. And he's got an album coming out, and an album bomb is expected. So that's going to be coming pretty soon. And in that point, we got to talk about that, because there is a lot of domination by younger artists that are making their way up. Going back to April of this year, there was a story that Steve Knopper at Billboard actually talked about country streaming boom, and that are beating pop music at their own game. So they talked about from 2019 to 2022, country audio streaming had jumped 58%, thanks to the likes of Luke Combs, Morgan Wallen, and Zach Bryan. And that right now, that growth in streaming is bigger than any other genre besides Latin music. So, for instance, Morgan Wallen's number one album, One Thing at a Time, racked up 483 million audio streams in its debut week, the fifth largest streaming week ever. The only people that beat him are albums by Drake, Taylor Swift, and 21 Savage. And then Luke Combs put out an album, Getting Old, that hit 83.5 million streams. And then they talked to Tim Fawcett, Senior VP of Commercial Partnerships at Warner Music Nashville, representing Zach Bryan, excuse me. And they said the artist repertoires are really good right now. It appears to be sticking with a younger audience. Right. Younger fans they're honing in on country music. All these artists also work through their way on the social media. So Luke Combs started out on Vine. Morgan Wallen's breakthrough was 2020's Heartless, and EDM star and social media wizard Diplo worked with him on that. And then Brian recorded songs on his iPhone and posted them on YouTube. While pop, dance, and hip-hop took off on streaming as early as 2011, country tipped from physical to digital didn't start until 2017. Shortly after Morgan Wallen released his debut album, If I Know Me. So, Big Loud Records, GM and Senior VP Patch Culberson makes the point that, quote, it was the perfect storm of incredible music, the younger demo that was already gravitating to Morgan Wallen at the time, and the audience shifting mediums. Because remember, Morgan Wallen's also worked with artists. He's got a song with Little Dirk that's been out there for a while, and he has, not been afraid of collaborating with other artists in other genres. The other thing they said that country streaming contributed to was the COVID-19 pandemic. Older fans and digital holdouts, they were pulled away from terrestrial radio and CDs. And the mature demographics of the country weren't in their cars, not going to the office. And they would say, well, I'm going to figure out what streaming's all about. And this is according to Randy Goodman, CEO of Sony Music Nashville, which represents Luke Combs. Quote, and there are no more boundaries. Kids are listening to Kendrick Lamar and to Morgan. It's the younger demographic we're appealing to. Country hits now often start on streaming and then take off on radio instead of vice versa. The world began to change, Goodman would say. Country stars followed their pop, hip-hop, and EDM counterparts onto YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify virality long before radio took notice. And then from a record company perspective, we had to realize we had to make some shifts. Then you had Dangerous, a double album from Morgan Wallen that got 3.6 billion audio streams in 2021, hitting number one in overall consumption, outpacing Olivia Rodrigo and her debut album, Sour, Crazy, and Adele and Drake. And then last September, tracks by Morgan Wallen, Zach Bryan, Luke Combs hit the top 10 of Billboard streaming songs chart. The first time at least 3 non-holiday country songs reached a milestone. And that week, 13 of the 50 songs were country on the chart dating April 15th. And then Wallen had 3 tracks. Zach Bryan had Something in the Orange at number 14, and there was more to come. And now more new stars that have been in the mix as well. Cole Swindell, Bailey Zimmerman, and Jelly Roll all released albums or about to if they haven't already. Now, how about this? Country music fans are very dedicated to streaming. There was a Digital Media Association survey in 2023 that said that they spend about 1,270 hours per year listening to music annually. That's a lot. 1.6 times more than country music fans who do not stream. Am I making my point yet? I'm pretty sure I am. The domination is there. And the reason why it's happening now, let's talk about that part. The country superstars we mentioned, and we can also mention Megan Maroney and Lainey Wilson. The transition has been in streaming. Country music was in an odd spot, relying upon established stars, struggling on streaming while a new younger class had to be solidified. Now it's more balanced. And country's new class embraces all the traditional building blocks that make country music what it is, but they also incorporate elements that make them fresh and unique for Gen Z country music listeners. Wallen and Zimmerman embody the everyman and then seamlessly incorporate hip-hop aesthetics into their sounds and style. Lainey Wilson, Lauren Elena are women empowerment anthems they're making right now, catchy and intelligent, and the ways that they respond to the vapidity of bro country, which is talking about Morgan, this would be Florida Georgia Line if you want to know as an example. And then Zach Bryan, Hardy, Jelly Roll are giving younger listeners gateways into different genres, folk, Americana, and rock. And many of these artists are extremely comfortable on social media and on TikTok, where they personally engage with fans, teasing and build anticipation for new music, and get instant feedback from their core audiences about what songs immediately connect with them. And you have songs from established country acts to the new acts now all over the charts streaming and doing well. They also say that the comeback right now for country music is also because of diverse country aesthetics decorated the past decade. When you had Old Town Road, fusion of country and trap, that made a big deal. Beyonce performing at the 50th annual Country Music Association Awards in 2016. She did a live performance with the Chicks on a song, the song Daddy Listens, a remix of it. And then there was a Broadway musical, Shucked, original music and lyrics from country songwriters Brandy Clark and Steve McAnally. And star Alex Newell has earned a history-making Tony Award for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. And then we've also seen pop stars Justin Timberlake, Kelly Clarkson, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, and Pink dip their toes into country music, as well as a handful of country songs. Sam Hunt's Body Like a Back Road, that also was doing really well. Remember that. And Chris Stapleton's Tennessee Whiskey. Sizable and enduring cultural moments increase the visibility of country music and Southern aesthetics across a diverse collection of black and queer artists, helping mainstream ears and minds become more open to the sounds and styles of country music. And country has been taking cues from hip-hop. So we've talked about Morgan Wallen working with other stars. Not a problem with that. He's collaborated with Little Durk twice, and 2 of the songs hit the top 25 in the Hot 100. Bailey Zimmerman joined forces with rappers. She worked with Young Boy Never Broke Again for a song on the Fast X soundtrack called The Rock in a Hard Place. And hip-hop's language is influencing contemporary country. Lauren Elena, Lainey Wilson, put out a duet called Thick as Thieves, a celebration of their plump derrieres. At other moments, like we talk about Nelly's Country Grammar, Florida Georgia Line's Cruise, Jason Aldean's Dirt Road Anthem, right? But country music has learned from the dominance of hip-hop that a long album when it comes to boosting streaming totals. Rappers have become somewhat notorious for pumping out lengthy 20-plus track albums at a relatively high speed. Morgan Wallen's last 2 albums had 33 and 36 songs respectively. And Luke Combs, his last record, had 18 tracks. A crowded track list provides some cushion on streaming, and that's exactly what the genre needed as it completed its rise to the current level of chart prominence. And then TikTok revolutionized everything. Gen Z TikTokers in the South and Midwest have their own digital enclaves in the app with their own in-group trends. It's just what it is. Country is evolving, country's changing, and country's hot. Latin music's very hot, but country is, in America, major. And you know what's also helping this as well? We have to talk about the skeleton in the closet. Obviously, there's the political backlash. The political, honestly, friction that is created on both sides of politics. I don't like talking about this part, but we have to acknowledge it. And the Daily Beast wrote about this and talked about how the current stream of controversial, quote, country songs has created a path. I'm getting through the political part, trying to filter it out. Creating a path for certain artists to achieve media success. It's hardly the first time we've seen songs being rewarded for what they said is extreme patriotism or conveying racist messages. And they talked to a music theory professor, Philip Ewell, that said that when it comes to racism in American music, the genre of country has been long emblematic of America's bipartisan tensions. So they want to make that point there too. Got it. Now, the professor also goes on and says that while there are right-wing listeners and problematic artists like Jason Aldean that aren't representative of the genre as a whole, even though he's openly leftist, typically female artists like Morris, Mickey Guyton, and Casey Musgraves aren't enjoying the same radio airplay on country stations or being rewarded in the same fashions as Morgan Wallen or Jason Aldean. Quote, there are obviously a lot of really great progressive country artists, gay country artists. Tyler Childers comes to mind. That he has a song that charted most recently, and they refer, one of the shows I watch is a guy, Mark Grondin. He does a YouTube channel called Spectrum Pulse, and he puts a show on called Billboard Breakdown. Mark, I watch the show religiously every week. Thank you for putting it together. Really, since 2018, I think I've been watching. It's a good show. Billboard Breakdown. Go look for it. Spectrum Pulse on YouTube. Follow his channel. He's got good stuff over there. And then he makes a point, okay, relatively progressive artists like Faith Hill and Tim McGraw, icons like Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson, it's kind of convulsing country music. And in a way that the country's kind of convulsing. I think it's just reflective of that. So there's the part of that that's going on that everybody's kind of considering and talking about. But country, with that, is another factor as to why it's happening like that. And when there's another story that talks about country music breaking the Billboard charts right now, Morgan Wallen, his album this year, One Day at a Time, became only the third album to dominate both charts at once for at least 11 straight weeks since Thriller by Michael Jackson did it twice. And even though he had the controversy in 2021 about using the N-word, his use of the N-word, it didn't hurt his career. He's more popular than ever. Yep. I think I made my point. And there's stories that continue to go on about this, because the other thing is, too, that, because it's not popular, hey, good clickbait, let's talk about country on all media. Listen, I'm talking about it from the perspective, and I'm going to make my point, but I have to go ahead and lay out the context of my argument. So let's finish it up with this. My argument here with this. Because country's going to be around. It's going to be a prominent place. We already know that. There's a lot of artists that are going to be able to keep putting out records. Because the current crop of certain artists we've talked about, they're getting older. And maybe they're not going to be out there as much as we had them before. We talk about Ariana Grande. We talk about, Taylor Swift's a different story. She's just an entity of her own. She is an anomaly, all right? Like right now, what she's doing is remarkable. She's now got a movie that's going to go on based about her Eras tour, and she is selling out shows in Mexico City, and she's going to go worldwide. And, I don't know if she's going to get that hysteria like Michael Jackson is, but she's doing pretty well. And I'm kind of curious with some of the things that she's been doing. She had, I think, Selena Gomez perform with her on stage during something. Sabrina Carpenter right now is opening up for her in some shows, and that's doing well for her, getting herself noticed. And we're looking at just what's going on. Like just in the last week, there's so much more going on right now that the summer of country music is just going crazy. We already had Morgan Wallen's One Thing at a Time, Luke Combs Getting Old back in March. And then we had Jelly Roll put out his Whitsitt Chapel project that released in June. And now this past weekend, Turnpike Troubadours released their first album in 6 years. Zach Bryan has his self-titled project. And then we have Oliver Anthony, who put out basically an EP out there, putting all the songs out there. So critics, and this is according to whiskeyriff.com, they're saying that the dominant run of country music isn't just a summer movement, There seems to be a feeling that country music has somewhat caught up to the streaming model of music, and that could be the reason that country music appeals to so many people. So, country's staying around, but it only opened up because of the lack of music going on, okay? There's something going on with music where dance music is not allowed to go ahead and get into the mainstream. Radio stations don't want to play it. By the way, country stations are doing pretty good. They're not doing too bad. They have an audience. Because country also commands a digital audience and a traditional audience. Because there's a lot of people that still listen to regular country music. And country music actually is programmed pretty well. Believe it or not. They still put time and effort and talent into those stations. Because country is still, it's not an overly thriving genre, but it's still important. And with all that's going on, country still makes radio a priority. And that's not happening with hip hop, and that's not happening with pop music, and every other kind of music that can be in the mainstream right now. But yeah, so is it a thing where we're seeing that streaming now has changed everything for all the music that's out there in country and seeing what it's going to do? And maybe so. Could be that. Taking time for country artists to find their way over into it because of the younger artists that were able to go and get people on streaming platforms, lure them in because of the fact they were on social media in the first place. The fact that they're getting to a younger audience. There's something to be said about that. If you look at the current setup of Media Base, okay, they're the ones that always list who the chart holders right now are, okay? By the way, Jason Aldean putting out an album on November 3rd, Highway Desperado. See, they're all going to take advantage of it. But if you look at the current list right now, okay, the current top 40 of Media Base, right, which is what radio stations are going to basically use as their point. At the moment, Taylor Swift is on top altogether. Olivia Rodrigo will have her album Sour coming up in a couple weeks, which will make a difference. And Dua Lipa is living off of the Barbie soundtrack with that song Dance the Night. But other than that, SZA put out an album, and she's kind of still, the remnants of that are still going on. They're still putting out proper singles for her. Calm Down is a song that's been up there for a year plus. And they just have kept that song in rotation because there's nothing else to replace it on radio. Miguel, Sure Thing, that was a viral sensation to bring that song back 12 years later. Nicki Minaj, Ice Spice, that's a Barbie soundtrack thing. All those summer songs are going to fade. 50-50 Cupid, that's also going to fade. And then what else after that? You're looking at just say to yourself, well, there's a lot of known names or a lot of artists that have been, they don't have that big major staying power. Doechii, Dominic Fike, Jungkook, who's split off from BTS, David Kushner, Bakar, right? Weeknd, unless he's putting out a new album, he'll get the gun be up there. Selena, she has a new single soon. And maybe an album comes up and works after that. Miley Cyrus, Used to Be Young. That's also living off, her working off of her album that she put out earlier this year. What else? When you look at the rest of the board, there's a lot of artists that are just not in here. Like Travis Scott put his song out, and K-pop's got a little bit of play, but not too much, because the song was just basically streaming and going away. What you're listening to in heavy rotation on radio now, it's a lot of artists that have been around that, how much staying power do they have to stay up on top? Because you have artists that some of these that have been around for a long time. Weeknd's been around for quite a bit. Ariana Grande's been around for quite a bit. Dua Lipa's been there for a while now, 7-8 years. You're going to see that. Where's the new crop of artists that might come in and start taking command? They're all coming from country. Now, it's a different story when you go to other parts of the world, but in America, this is what we have. Which means that, radio doesn't want to go ahead and prop up anybody else, right? In radio, they only care about all the previous acts, all the previous music that when radio was great. That's what they're playing. oldies, classic rock, or the soccer mom format, right? Adult, adult AC, right? Top 40 AC, or I would say it's adult contemporary, right? That's what's really being popular. That's it. Everything else, nothing. Nothing. So we talked about it a little bit earlier. Ariana Grande is leaving Scooter Braun's management. And a source with a knowledge of the situation confirms to Variety. And Scooter's team's trying to spread the story. Wanted to follow back up from an episode last week. They are friendly, this source says, but she's outgrown him and is excited to go in a different direction. So she's looking for something new. So this right here probably causes a lot of things to change altogether for her. So who knows when Ariana Grande is going to come back with any music right now. She put on a lot of music before. She moved on to do Wicked, and what goes on next? Let's find out. There's a few other stories I want to bring up. I mean, I can talk about YouTube. They're now doing an AI Music Alliance. I won't bring that story because it's also behind a paywall. I don't feel like taking the time to go and look for it. A story from Hypebot talking about now build fans, don't chase streams. And the founder and president of Shark Attack Records makes the point that buried beneath are many marketing practices that are geared towards what should be every musician's main goal, building a fan base and not chasing streams. Thought it was an interesting point that we made. Okay, we're going to move along now and talk about the strike. What we got right now so far. There's some other stories I had in here I was going to bring up, but I'm going to just take those out. Box office, I'm not going to talk about Barbieheimer and the ultimate uber success that Barbie's had this year. I could, but I'm not. All right, so got a story from LA Times talking about, it's a column that was written this week. Actually, as I record this was only a few hours ago. Hollywood studios have already lost the strikes. Now it's time to surrender. Interesting story. Mary McNamara, culture columnist and critic for the LA Times, she says, how many times does Hollywood have to tell the story, in fiction and non, before the people who run the entertainment industry understand it? Whatever short-term financial gain the studios represented by the AMPTP, Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, hope to gain by forcing the first dual strike of writers and actors in 40 years, has since been overshadowed by all that they're losing. Public support, brand loyalty, individual reputations, and group unity, not to mention the strikes, threatening the fall TV lineup. The theatrical release calendar, Dune 2 now is out for November and moves to March of next year. Film festivals, the Oscar race, and probably an entire year's worth of profit and prestige. The writers and actors have already won the battle of solidarity and righteousness. The question is how long before the studios get over themselves and make a deal. And as you know, over the 100-plus days that the writer strike's been going on, I've been talking about that the actors and writers were going to stay together in lockstep. This was the fight they had to have this go around, and they're going to win it. The studios can go ahead and hold off as long as they want right now, play the bluff, call the bluff, but they're not going to win it. So every attempt the AMPTP has made to control the negotiations has backfired. And that set a fire when they did that to the Writers Guild. SAG-AFTRA came out there and went on strike as well in July. And then the studios said, Netflix says, we'll just lean into international content. And Disney lectures strikers for their unreasonableness. Created a swell of picket lines and sympathy from every employee who has seen American jobs move overseas or heard how wealthy their bosses simply could not afford to offer single-digit percentage raises. And there was a poll that came out this week from Gallup. Americans clearly support the striking guilds. AMPTP has portrayed the studios as injured parties. And then the Writers Guild, the AMPTP put out their recently rejected contract proposal to divide the Writers Guild and potentially violate labor law. We talked about that last week. That also backfired. And now the studios have hired a new PR firm to do crisis management. Yes, damage control. I think we talked about that too. And the writer here says, Mary says, you know what would be the best PR right now? Ending the strikes. Because it isn't the guilds that are divided at this point, or it's the studios. On Wednesday, many of their heads met in an attempt to sort out what has been characterized as increasingly frantic infighting. The WGA's rejection of the proposal by the MPTP did not offer meaningful concessions in several key areas, and the writers are not going to back down on demands that make television writing an economically sustainable profession. Like it should be. In the studios, they thought they could use their chaos to their own advantage and then call back when they were done. Sure, let the writers strike. We'll use the shutdown to burn off certain contracts and projects. Goose quarterly reports before offering the guilds just enough, but not too much to send everyone back to work. But it hasn't worked. That used to work. But this time around, too much to lose. Too much technology to address now. AI, writers' rooms, streaming residuals based on viewership, not subscribers. And now the union picketing is now going on with UPS workers and airline pilots. So she writes here and finishes, guys, you lost the war. You've lost the war. The best thing to do right now is negotiate the terms of surrender. Yeah, it's over. Stick a fork in it. They need to go and do this. So the CEOs met on Wednesday to talk about all this. And Dominic Patton and Deadline.com reports about this. It was Dana Walden from Disney, Alan Bergman, Amazon Studios' Mike Hopkins and Jennifer Salke, Netflix's Ted Sarandos, Universal's Donna Langley, Warner Brothers Discovery's David Zaslav, all CEOs doing a virtual sit-down. No Bob Iger from Disney understood. Now, AMPTP is still waiting for an official response from the Writers Guild August 11th offer that they made. And the Guild made it a counter on August 15th that the ball's in the studios and streamers' court. And now there's a story that came out from Variety that talks about the fact that, this was actually a month ago. They were talking about the global content strategy is not paying off as they hoped. So we were talking about that Netflix thought they were well to go ahead and position to weather the current labor unrest, but that's not been the case. They're struggling as well. And that was because of the whole second quarter stats that they were talking about. We talked about that before. And then another story comes out from Variety, which I didn't bring up yet, was the streaming viewership needing a metric to end the strikes. That was another thing that was brought up. Maybe so. But if Nielsen gets their way into go ahead and actually doing the formal documenting of viewership stats, if the streaming services will allow it, we'll see what happens. Now, one other thing I was going to make mention of when it comes to television that's also hurting, it's not just the streaming services, and it's not just, cable television, it's network. Did you know this? Story coming from Cord Cutters News that with people going more towards streaming services and away from syndicated content, local stations are scrambling to fill daytime lineups. So yeah, the days of having all these different syndicated shows to fill up the daytime lineups, it's also going away too. Broadcast TV stations are in trouble. Byron Allen, chairman and CEO of Allen Media Group, him from Entertainment Studios and all those things that he does. So for instance, there's been shows that have been going away. Warner Brothers Discovery have recently canceled People's Court and Judge Mathis, two of their longest running court shows. CBS Media Ventures had Judge Judy and her run in 2021 and moved it to Amazon Freebies, right? CBS stopped airing their top rated talk shows, Dr. Phil and Rachel Ray, and now they're going to start showing 600 episodes of 48 hours to fill time slots. So we might start seeing on network TV during the daytime true crime and court shows because they're less expensive and they can be quickly produced in batches and accumulate a large supply of shows. Disney has completely left linear TV. The last show they had on syndication was Tamron Hall in 2019. And local TV right now is scaling back on spending on shifting towards low-cost reruns and game shows. Three series that are filling vacant daytime TV slots. People Puzzler by Lee Remini, which is produced by Game Show Network. Person, Place, or Thing, hosted by Melissa Peterman on Fox. And Who the Bleep Is That on TMZ. And then a vice president of programming at Fox TV stations and Fox First Run, Stephen Brown, says, if you start programming repeats into your schedule, you're just adding to the doom spiral. Interesting. All this TV's falling apart. What's next? And also we're learning about how streaming networks, according to Variety, they're actually talking about, a couple weeks ago, they talked about the brandification of FAST. We didn't talk about this, but I had this held up that we should talk about. So since the pandemic, remember we had services that were like the branded things that we had that, we had all these new streaming services popping up and everything was more about, okay, it's Netflix, it's Amazon, and all these new streaming services came into play, right? Single IP channels have become a force across the world for attracting an audience. Exclusive channels are being increasingly wielded as a different way to differentiate channel offerings. So now we have branded what is called FAST channels. Free ad-supported streaming channels. So like the Pluto TVs, the Amazons, all those. You now have branded channels now more than ever. And so all these different corporate companies are putting out programming, branded channels onto the Plutos, the Amazon Primes, the Google Casts, the Rokus, all these different places that, with every platform or every kind of dongle or every kind of way that you want to watch TV, there's all these different apps that are out there that will bring you hundreds upon hundreds of programs. Samsung TV Plus. You got hundreds upon hundreds of programs that are just being rerun in 24 hours or just being branded as such. And it's happening more and more than ever. And that's been another thing that's also been going on right now, that we're getting more of those type of channels. What else are you going to do? Okay, I think I ran through everything. Good stuff. That's the show for tonight. Thank you for listening in. Finding this program as you always do. And by the way, I must thank Lou Pate. I've been on with him on a couple of various radio stations. And at some point, I need to go ahead and bring him on as a guest on the program, which I will be doing soon. So Lou, if you're listening, I'm going to get you on here very soon. We still got to have that. I owe you an interview because I want to get your story out there. And, I know that there are quite a few people that will see his post on X and he's bumping this program every time it's on YouTube or wherever it is. And I appreciate it greatly. I want to make sure I put it on this platform and I make that clear that I really appreciate it. So thank you, Lou Pate. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. KingofPodcasts.com is where everything that I do on the program is. So make sure to go ahead and look for that. And enjoy. Hey, got a lot of things going on this weekend. What do I got? So I'm going to go see Equalizer 3 this weekend. I'm so happy that wrestling pay-per-views are back at my Regal Theater now, so I'm going to go back on Sunday to go catch that. We've got college football weekend that's coming up. That's awesome. And the fall's almost here. We're getting back to that. Summer's kind of winding away. So enjoy the Labor Day weekend. Thanks for listening in. And until next week, remember the content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.